The man madly honked the horn to signal the police. Originally lazy fat man turned his head to look at this, realized that there is actually a group of armed men killed over. The fat man immediately transformed into a flexible rabbit head into the truck. Two people in order to live hard to start the truck almost out of gas. The man who saw this scene also realized that something was wrong. He did not want to lose his life and desperately chased forward. Luckily, the truck ran out of gas, cannot run up the speed of the men. Finally climbed into the truck to escape. But by now the armed men had already caught up with the man, had to risk his life to refuel the van. The truck finally got up to speed, but the enemy was getting closer and closer. They thought they would be doomed, but unexpectedly, the militants suddenly slowed down and braked. The fat man looked up and saw the American helicopter gunships passing by. And not only that, there were also several armored vehicles in front of them. Then they arrived at the barracks. The captain saw that the two had crossed the Delta of Death to make the delivery and was very pleased with them. So the captain did not hesitate to ask his men to take them to get the final payment. The warehouse was full of dollars, tens of billions of dollars, which shocked David and his men to their core. They collected their share of $8 million and were escorted back to the US in a military plane. The fat man felt like he was on top of his game, and David also got his share of the payoffs. In order to work conveniently, they also bought a Seaview villa together. Since then their business has become more and more big. The investor, Duff, saw the potential of the two and increased his investment to $10 million. Taking advantage of this momentum, they simply set up their own company. They hired people to do nothing but search for orders on the bidding network that no one else could see. If the previous orders were all small fish, then the demand David saw that night would be a big fish. He quickly called the fat man to see 360,000 sniper rifles, 1,084,000 grenades, 45,000 RPGs, and the most unbelievable thing was 100 million rounds of AK-47 ammunition. In order to get this big fish, the two of them attended a large-scale arms exhibition. They thought the resources here would help them a lot, but when they asked around, they realized that the transport license for this order alone was not something that anyone could handle, let alone placing such a large order in one go. This made the two men very frustrated, but lucky stars above the casino. David met the legendary Henry. He immediately arranged for Fatty and the other side of the meeting. Henry's resources were vast and he could have taken the order, but because of his previous operation he was listed as a terrorist by the US, and although he had plenty of goods and resources he couldn't become a supplier to the US. They could have taken what they needed and made a lot of money together. But for safety's sake, the stupid duo decided to go to Albania for a site visit. Pushing open the doors of the warehouse, they saw that it was filled with all kinds of weapons, from tanks to helicopter gunships. There were 700 other warehouses of this size. It was the first time since the end of the Cold War that David had seen such a spectacular scene. The next container in front of them was the thing they were most concerned about, which was 100 million rounds of ammunition. But when they opened the crates to reveal the bullets, they realized they had been in storage for 20 years. The fat man was worried about the quality of the bullets, but the man on the other side of the table directly put out an AK-47, signaled that they could test it themselves. Fatty was not ambiguous and directly began to blitz. David watched the flow of shooting hard, a lot more solid. This billion rounds of ammunition supply problem is no longer a roadblock for them. But the next two people have to beat the other arms dealers with the advantage of the price in order to do so. 3 weeks later, the fat man came to the beach excitedly, which made David realize that the $300 million order had been won. But for a small company like theirs, they'd have to falsify audits, financial statements for the last 3 years, and so on, in order to meet the Defense Department's scrutiny. In addition, the two also had to face the government's tough interviews, but to their surprise, the interviewer did not suspect that their information problems and was very satisfied with the performance of the two men. But the fat man still heard the implication that the only reason they won the bid was because the price was so low. Because this order is a huge amount of, David printed out a paper contract to formalize the two people's share, although the fat man generously signed his name. But looked at David's eyes have changed. David went to Albania to supervise the delivery of the goods. Originally thought it was easy to supervise the work, but he found a major problem from the packaging of the origin of this batch of bullets is not from the Soviet Union. He hastened to call the fat man to discuss the countermeasures. After learning the news, Fatty directly to the phone to the supplier Henry. But Henry said he was only responsible for providing the bullets, where the two sides did not make restrictions at first. He let the two Fatty to think of their own ways. The problem of the wrong goods. Fatty also came to Albania. He came up with a good idea, like the label on the towel, as long as it is torn off, do not repackage the bullets. A little bit of the Ministry of Defense. That group of people will not know the origin of the problem. They found a local packaging company that offered them $100,000. David could barely hold back his laughter before agreeing to the price with Humpty Dumpty. It turns out that replacing the bulky wooden airboxes and steel boxes with lighter packaging reduced the overall mass of the shipment by 180 tons, which in turn saved them $3 million in net profit from less freight and less fuel consumption. With the packaging problem out of the way, the fat man had a new problem on Christmas Eve night when he found out that Henry was getting his bullets for 5 cents a round, but selling them for 10 cents. Henry had made over $7 million without doing a thing. Fatty wanted to kick Henry out of the business and work directly with the supplier, but this was strongly opposed by David. So-called there is a way to make money and a way to do things. If it wasn't for Henry, they would be nothing. On the surface, Fatty promised not to do anything, but that night David was inexplicably kidnapped by a big man.